Is it all right? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. As you see, we have guests this evening. We have Lord Pickles, Dr. Gilly, Carr, and Sally Seeley, who is Lord Pickles' Chief of Staff. So the format for this evening will be that Lord Pickles will make some opening remarks. There will then be a slide presentation by Dr. Carr, and then the floor will be open to questions. So I will hand the floor to my Lord.
Well, bless you, thank you very much. As Mr. President said, my name is Eric Pickles. I'm a member of the House of Lords, and I'm the UK's Special Envoy on post-Holocaust issues. Prior to that, I was a Member of Parliament for 25 years, and the last 5 years of which I was a member of the Cabinet. Now, it's one of the responsibilities of the Special Envoy is to be the head of our delegation to an organisation called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which is IHRA for short. It's an organisation composed of about 34 members, most of which are from Europe, but in addition we have America, Canada, Argentina, Australia, and there are other members seeking to join. One of our tasks is to map and to protect death sites and also sites in which the Holocaust has been involved. Now, there isn't a single Holocaust site within Europe that isn't under some kind of threat. In many ways, the construction of the buildings that went into them was never designed to last 80 years. I'm a member of the International Commission at Auschwitz, and we're going to an enormous amount to preserve the huts and to preserve the evidence. And we're looking at a number of sites throughout Europe to try and get best practice established for how to preserve. And Gilly, who is our lead on the subcommittee dealing with it, I should say Dr. Carr, has come up with some recommendations. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the status of the recommendations. These are suggestions. There is no intention whatsoever of imposing these arbitrarily upon you. We've had a series of meetings prior to this and a tour of the site, and I have to say I've been enormously excited by the positive attitude shown by your politicians and also by stakeholders. In addition to this meeting, I had meetings in Guernsey with the Chief Minister and External Minister, which we talked about a number of things that are related to this. The British government intends by Holocaust Memorial Day next January to release all documents that are involve the Holocaust, so that we have everything out in the open. And I'm delighted to say we had a very constructive meeting with the BOIC, and there is an agreement that we'll work together. So between now and the turn of the year, we hope to work out the various terms of reference and the various procedures in order to be able to achieve that. We've also looked at a number of convictions that have taken place while the Nazis were in occupation, some of it which wouldn't stand close scrutiny on procedural grounds, because basically a lot of the confessions were obtained by torture. So they're hoping to make some announcements about this. The basic idea of this is against that background of complete disclosure. And the second part of it is we wanted to ensure that the voice of the people of Alderney is front and centre. So I think we've tried to put something together that will ensure that this will move at a speed that suits the people of Alderney, and hopefully in a way that will gather your approval. We have 8 very straightforward, very simple recommendations that won't in any way materially change the way in which the occupation is recorded. We're also making some suggestions to try and remember why this place is such a nice place to be. And I think the debt that we owe to many people's parents and grandparents of that decision to come back and to bring about normality on these islands, to make it a place that I like to visit, and anybody I know, anybody's ever visited Alderney always wants to come back. And again, we recognise that's a sensitive subject and we want to deal with it very sensitively. But I think really you've heard enough from me. I'd be very happy to answer any questions in due course, providing they're reasonable and straightforward. And all the complicated questions will be answered by Gilly. So Gilly, would you like to just take us through this very short PowerPoint presentation? So don't worry too much about that.
Thank you very much.
It is.
It is. Thank you very much to Kath and William for inviting us here to Alderney. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is, as someone who's been sitting out a rather horrible 18 months in the UK, what a pleasure it is to come here. So thank you very much for having us, and thank you for showing up tonight. And before I begin, I'm sure you'd like to know who I am. My name is Dr. Gilly Carr. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Cambridge. My Masters and PhD are from the University of Cambridge. I'm a fellow at St Catherine's College. I'm also a fellow of the Society of Antiquaries and the Royal Historical Society. And my specialism is victims of Nazism from the Channel Islands. I'm an archaeologist. I also publish in the fields of history, Holocaust studies, and heritage studies. And this subject is something I'm very passionate about. So I have been working with my IHRA team. I chair a project in IHRA called Safeguarding Sites. And it's all about beginning to write, in fact we're nearly at the end of writing, some best practice guidelines for Europe about the best way in which people can look after their heritage, their Nazi persecution heritage, their Holocaust heritage. And over the last couple of years, since we first came to Alderney in 2019, my team of international experts and I have been working on putting together something that will work for Alderney. And because I have been working, I do my field work in the Channel Islands and have done for 15 years, I wanted to be very sure that I had something that I hoped would work for you. And I wanted my colleagues to understand the sensitivities for people here. Now, if you're wondering, I always get asked about my own background and why I'm interested in the Channel Islands. And my family's from Guernsey. My mum's family were Huguenot refugees who came to Guernsey in 1680. And my dad's family, my dad's mum was one of 10. They came over to Guernsey between 1910 and 1947. And so on my dad's side, 7 members were sent to Bibrac civilian internment camp during the occupation. And for my mother's side, my grandparents were evacuated to Scotland and my great-grandparents stayed in Guernsey during the occupation. And I know that many of you have family stories of evacuation before the Germans came. My grandparents were on the last boat out of Guernsey, and my grandpa came into the kitchen one day and said to my grandmother, "The last boat is leaving the harbour, we've got to be on it." Grandpa knew he'd be joining the army. And my grandmother, who was a writer, she was a poet, grabbed what was on the kitchen table, which was 6 pencils, and ran to the harbour. That was her packing. And her mother-in-law, who ran Maison Carré bakery in St Peter Port, I don't know how many of you ever knew that bakery, pinged open the cash till, took hold of a wad of notes, I don't know how much of a wad it was, went to the harbour, found my grandmother, stuffed it down her capacious bosom, which I didn't inherit, and my grandmother went to England as a refugee with 6 pencils and a dress full of notes, and that's how she started her life as an evacuee. And my mother was born in exile in Scotland, and this is why I'm interested in this project. So I'm sure you're all very interested in the 8 recommendations my team has made. I'm sure you're very apprehensive about some of this, and I really want you to ask me questions afterwards, but to not be apprehensive, because I have been as careful as I can be to put together ideas that will work with you. And these are going to be a community-driven project. Okay, so let us start. Now, I just wanted to show you just some of the books that I've written, just so you know that this really is my specialist area. As I say, the focus is on victims of Nazism. It ranges between those who are deported, those who were sent away to concentration camps. I've written on the heritage, the legacies of occupation after the war, the prisons, on resistance. Those are just some of my books. And there'll be more to come. But anyway, I just thought I wanted to give you some confidence that I knew what I was talking about, and that I'm not standing here completely ignorant of your story. So as Lord Pickles says, every single Holocaust site and site of Nazi persecution in Europe are facing challenges today. Lord Pickles outlined just some of them, but the biggest challenge is it's been a while since the Second World War now, and for many places there are very few traces left of the sites that were once there. And other places in Europe, and this is just some photos of some of the challenges that IHRA has been dealing with and works with. Some of these are images from concentration camps and labour camps elsewhere in Europe. So they include images, for example, the bottom left here, this is graffiti, this is at Auschwitz. And the top left, Staro Sajmište outside Belgrade in Serbia. This is a building of a pavilion of a showground where Jews were put in before being taken away to be executed, and you can see it's falling apart. So there are problems with wear and tear and a lack of finances and things like that. So all of these sites are, if anyone has questions about these later, I'll be happy to give you more detail. So I'm now going to start with the recommendations. There are 8. This is the first. It's to do with mapping. Simply mapping and adding the main sites to the land registry. So the main sites that we're talking about today are 5 sites. The 4 campsites and Longy Common. If you as a community at a later date want to add more sites, that's fine. We're just starting off with these 5 in our recommendations. Just that they're added to the land registry, and using aerial photographs to see the development of those camps over time, the barrack blocks, etc., we can add those to the land registry. Okay, recommendation number 2. And this is the front and centre of the main recommendation we have. It is a website. And you'll be very happy to know that the University of Cambridge and the Ministry have are paying for this website, and it's an interactive map of the island. And there will be different coloured pins to mark 5 different data sets. And first among them is the Holocaust sites, sites of Nazi persecution, the 5 sites we've mentioned, but more can be added. And so remember, these are all things to do with the island as a landscape and stories and events rooted in that island. So also these data sets are going to be location of homecoming stories. And so for those of you who have mothers, grandparents, parents, or even you yourselves who were experienced homecoming, and you have stories that are rooted at particular places in the landscape, we can put the pin in the map and hear your story. Same for evacuation stories. Also, it's going to be very important to have on that map where your memorials are. So for example, with the Hammond Memorial, it would be great to get that on the map, and the history of the Hammond Memorial, the years of the slave workers coming back to the ceremonies, photographs from those ceremonies, photographs of the ceremonies as they happen today. Whatever you want on there that represents what the Hammond Memorial means to you, let's get it on there. And also German fortifications, because there are those in the island for whom those sites matter too, and those can also be on the map. Now, the model that I have in mind of a website that I know has worked in the Channel Islands, and that is the Frank Falla Archive, www.frankfallarchive.org. This is hosted by Jersey Heritage, and it tells the story of every single Channel Islander from Guernsey and Jersey who was deported to a Nazi prison or concentration camp. And I'm just going to show you some images from the Frank Falla Archive to give you an idea of what I have in mind. This is an interactive map of Europe to show the prisons and camps that islanders were sent to. Imagine this as Alderney with different coloured pins, or they can be different shapes. And what you'd do is you'd click on one of those, and straight away you'd be taken to the place in the website which tells the story. So again, if we have a look at a couple of images from the Frank Faller Archive website, on the right-hand side we have Alderney camp, because there were some people from Jersey who were sent to this camp, and from Guernsey too. And what happens on the website is you have a dot on the map, you see where that is, there are photographs, there's the research story, there's whatever people have contacted me with information. There are also archival documents from Europe. And on the left-hand side, the Frank Faller Archive website is all about people. And this is Gordon Prejean from Jersey, who many of you know was in a camp here in Alderney. So that's why I selected his story, because I know his name will be known to a number of you. And so the website becomes a reliable source of factual information. And as many archival documents, we said one of our missions is to open archives. Let's get all of those archival documents on the website so there can be no mistake about what is out there, and they are free to view for everyone. There are no hidden documents. One of the things that's very important to me is that this website is your website, and so I want to set up a consultation group, and I would love any of you who'd like to be volunteers on this to come up to me afterwards or send me an email. I'll give you my email address, and I would like this consultation group made up of islanders to tell me, what do you want the website to be called? What do you want it to look like? What design do you want? What information do you want on there? So I have in mind that this is a website, as I said, it's rooted in the language, in the landscape, but it's also rooted in time. And maybe it might be called something like Alderney 1940 to 1949, for example. It's a very particular historical period that encapsulates these Holocaust sites, Nazi persecution sites, but also the important stories that speak for you and your identity. Homecoming, evacuation, rebuilding after the war. You can put your family's stories on if you want to. It's voluntary. It's going to be great to get Alderney School involved, and so I look forward to meeting. I'm yet to meet the headmaster of Alderney School and say hello. So that would be fabulous if we could get. And the important thing about getting teenagers involved is they are going to be the guardians of these stories later on. When none of us are here, the young kids in the school will inherit these stories, and through working with their parents and grandparents to collect the stories, we can keep them in the community and make the children have that knowledge at an early age to be the carriers of this story. So the website is for islanders. You are the principal audience. You're going to be the ones who decide on what the stories are. And it's going to be a trusted source of information. It's a place where the facts will be. It would be great if the States of Alderney host it, but maybe there's another organisation in Alderney who would like to be the host. We can talk about that. And as I say, we're paying for the website because we know these things don't come cheap. And we have a little bit of money, which I've got from the University of Cambridge, to pay for evaluation of the website. So someone afterwards, someone employed from the island, can actually see, is this website doing what we want it to do? Does it work for you? But also I have a little bit of money to pay for someone to be a coordinator in the island to kind of get people together. So, I really wanted it to be someone in the island who did this, because I do want this to be your project. Recommendation number 3, educational materials. Short and sharp and simple concept, it goes on the website. It is a resource for schools. Perhaps the local school already teaches the Holocaust as it applies to Alderney, or homecoming, as it, and so let's get that information on the website, let's add to it. And these are just 2 images from the Frank Faller Archive of educational materials for Guernsey and Jersey. This is Frank Faller. He was, if you don't know him, he wrote the book The Silent War, which he was on the Guernsey Underground News Service and was deported to Naumburg and Frankfurt prisons during the occupation. And He was instrumental in Channel Islanders getting compensation in the 60s, and a lot of the stories have their basis from the website with Frank Haller. So that's him, and these images on the right are when I came to Guernsey and Jersey with my colleague from the Holocaust Educational Trust in London, a chap called Martin Winston, and we filmed ourselves giving Holocaust education to teachers so that any teacher in the Channel Islands can watch the videos and add that to their teaching practice. Recommendation number 4, heritage protection of sites. So I know it's been in the news lately about Lagerzilt and about getting heritage protection for that. We'd like to add the other camps in knowledge, where shall I say, there we go, in knowledge that some of these sites are built on already, so obviously there's a discussion to be had there, but also to get the area of the cemetery and where geophysics and aerial photos show mass graves exist, or rather burial pits or pits just outside the cemetery. We can talk about what to call them, but it's about getting those areas protected so that in the future no one can build a shopping centre on top of them. Not that that's going to happen in the middle of Longy Common, but just to protect the land. So the recommendation number 5 is an exhibition, and this might be online. This is an example of an online one of an exhibition I had in London. It can also be a physical site. It might be to do with a school. It might be at the school. It might get the school students involved. And this perhaps could be in partnership with Alderney Museum if Alderney Museum wants to, but it's going to focus on the facts and the testimonies of the prisoners, archival documents. So that's going to be the exhibition. Recommendation number 6 is signage at sites. So at present, although all of you know where the sites are, it's about, one of the things that IHRA is concerned with is making sure that sites are not anonymous in the landscape. So I'm not talking about having a memorial next to everyone, I'm talking about signage. Now I just want to explain these images here. From 2014 to 2016, I excavated a Labour camp in Jersey called Lager Wick. And this site is a nature reserve for breeding birds. And so it wasn't the landowners provided this log. It's a hollowed out log, it's about that big, about that wide, with an information plaque sunk into it. Just a bit of information about the site that was there. So we might be talking about that. But I'm aware that some of these sites are very sensitive and you don't necessarily want these kind of signs outside. So the solution that we've thought of is to have these are QR codes. I'm sure you've seen them before, and they're very clever. One of the things that's being increasingly used with the pandemic in the UK, so that people aren't touching things, we're all a bit nervous about that sort of thing, is you get out your iPhone, you select the photo function, you hold it over a QR code, and bing, magically, you're taken to the website, and the website that we've been proposing. So, outside a site where perhaps it isn't appropriate to have an information board, you might have, let's say, a little wooden post with, I don't know, the name of your camp on, let's say, and then a QR code. And that information is there, and also any visitor to the island can also access that information. And so there's another conversation then to be had about, okay, if we do have signs, what size, what format, what location, what content. So again, this is going to be for the island to decide. Recommendation number 7 is about boundary marking at Longy Common. Now, when we came as a team to, I've been to Alderney many times before, but not in any kind of official capacity, but when we came in 2019 with Lord Pickles and Sally, there we are in the corner, we were shown around by Colin Partridge, who, we said to him precisely where at Longy Common was the cemetery. And we he had his old photos, oops, a daisy, not about there. He had his, there isn't a laser there, okay, he had his photo of the cemetery there, and we couldn't precisely say from that photo precisely where. And so our recommendation is to mark the edges of, and I'm going to get on the stage to point to what I'm talking about here, not just the cemetery, but also aerial photos and geophysical survey show further pits here. And we think that there's a good chance that there may once have been or may still be bodies there. And so what this proposes would be to somehow maybe put a marker in the corners of this area to just demarcate where it is. So we might be talking about, I don't know, one here, 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 just to sort of demarcate the edges. And it's a form of paying homage to or respect to those who may or may not still be there, but also were once there. And I know the slave workers and their return to the island is something that's important to you. So we recommend having, let's have a look at the next slide, which is the same point, maybe markers in the landscape. Those might be granite boulders, just sort of on the corner. They might be plants, something which is native to the island, so you don't have any invasive species, something low maintenance. I'm not suggesting mowing, otherwise someone would have to be out there every week. And we would recommend, as a way of deciding what to do, well, that's going to be up to you. So it would be great to have some people to get together to talk about that and to think about what might work for the island. And our final recommendation, number 8, is about adding some more voices and testimonies of prisoners to the Island Museum. Just to add some more. And that's it